9, Chris. The number is 9. That's how many draft picks that the Carolina Panthers have in 2025.
You know what else is 9?
What else?
The guy that we need to protect, Bryce Young. And we need to go into this offseason thinking all about him.
And fixing the defense, too.
That's also about him.
It's true. That's a good point.
Put the ball in his hands a little bit more.
Let's get this sucker started.
Get dialed in, Panthers fans. Here comes an in-depth look at your team. Exclusive interviews. Locker room insight. Let's huddle up for Panthers Playbook. Here are your hosts, Dennis Cox and Chris Lea.
Welcome back to another episode of Panthers Playbook alongside juvenile suburban cousin. That's Chris Lea. Dennis Cox here with you. Hey, that's Chris's words, not mine. By the way, leave your thoughts in the comments section. How many years do you think it's going to take for this Panthers team to be a legit contender? See, look at Chris. Look at Chris.
I went to the Cash Money concert in Charlotte the other day, so if anybody saw me, I was lit. That's what I look like. Sorry. That's what he's talking about.
So that's exactly, again, Chris's words, not mine. But leave your thoughts in the comment section about how long you think this is going to take for this franchise to be a legit contender. I'm not talking, can they squeak into the playoffs? I'm talking about when you look at this team and you say, Super Bowl contender, watch out. Like we do with some other teams in the league. But Chris, a big part of that is going to be started in a couple of months at the NFL draft. But right now, Dan Morgan, Dave Canales, Brant Tillis, everyone at the Carolina Panthers, the coaching staff, they're all at the NFL Combine, watching players work out, doing interviews with these players. And we got a glimpse earlier this week from Dave Canales and Dan Morgan about what they are prioritizing in the draft, Chris.
Yeah, I thought it was a good look into it. Dan Morgan essentially said number 1 is interior defensive line. Number 2, outside linebacker. So essentially edge rushers. 3 safety, and 4 being corner. And so I thought that was very interesting. It's all defense, right? Yeah. We know that there are some things that they could stand to use on offense, like a second running back, another tight end. Even though I thought it was also interesting though that they're going to let Tommy Tremble kind of look at the market, and see what happens. But that also tells me that they think they can sign him back at a cheaper price than maybe what he's going to potentially maybe go out there and look for. And then they also need a center, and we'll see what happens with Austin Corbett. So there's a few things that's kind of going out there that is very interesting to look at, but to see that their focus is on these 4 positions going into the draft, I would love to kind of be a fly on the wall to see what those draft interviews are like, or those combine interviews, I'm sorry, are looking like with some of these guys. I remember what Jordan Reed was telling us though. And, just in general, it feels like safety is just a down position all over. I mean, high school, college, and in the NFL. So it makes me wonder if it's going to be like that. Maybe do you invest a little bit more in safety on the free agent market than what you would in other positions, especially if you're looking at the NFL draft and the draft class that's there, and you don't necessarily see anybody that you really like. And so, there's a lot of different possibilities for the Carolina Panthers when it comes to that. But for sure, we know there's going to be a lot of interior defensive linemen, a lot of edge rushers, and what's my man named? Jalen Walker, is that his name?
Yeah, North Carolina's own.
My man is talking like he's already a Carolina Panther right now.
Yeah.
So that's really cool to see.
It's interesting because it seems like that's a consensus overall, not like unanimous, but the majority of people that do these mock drafts and things along those lines have Jalen Walker going to Carolina. And I know some people have the question of, well, is he actually an edge? Is he actually a linebacker, like off the ball? Or is he a little bit of both? And I think the position versatility is actually a good thing because there's no guarantee that Ejiro Evero is going to be back after this season. He's on the last year of his contract, and who knows what's going to happen after this year. But the one thing that Dave Canales actually told Anish Shroff earlier this week on the interview, you go check it out on the Carolina Panthers YouTube page, he talked about scheme fit and like how much it matters. Because you want to make sure that obviously you want to have a talented player, but you want to make sure that talented player fits what you are trying to accomplish and what you are trying to do, as opposed to just just a collection of just random talent. Because, for example, if you want to be a team that plays a lot of zone defense, hey, we're going to rush 4, play a lot of zone defense. Well, then a guy that excels at man-to-man coverage and not great at zone as a corner may not work out, or vice versa. You want to be a man-to-man team, you can't sign a bunch of guys that are great at playing zone. Normally, good coordinators would adjust their systems to players.
That was actually going to be what I was about to say. But keep cooking.
That's
keep
another
cooking.
Conversation for another time. But something that he told Nishrov that really stuck out to me was that with these interviews, I think they get about like 15 minutes or so with these interviews during the combine with players, is that Dave Canales really is trying to peel back the layers of the player as much as he can about finding out their football journey, about how they got to where they are. Is there a specific moment in time where they can say, yeah, when I was a sophomore in high school and I was a starter, went down with an injury, and I had to go into a game and I had to block an all-state defensive end who was a senior who was about to go to Auburn or something like that.
That's when I knew I could do it.
Exactly. That's when I knew that, like, hey, I can do this. So you can point back to that moment, because he feels like if you can point back to a moment in time, that you have more foresight for the future, as opposed to a player that comes in and is like, yeah, I started playing in the 6th grade and, I was the best player and, did all these things, and maybe they don't have a true direction. So that's just, again, not saying that's like a cut and dry thing, but that's Dave Canales' words. That's something that stuck out to me. Can they find that out? Can the Panthers front office and Dave Canales, can they figure that out about the players that they are interviewing and they're highly considering for the number 8 pick? Because, yeah, you're picking number 8. You should be able to get some sort of game changer. Yeah. Some sort of game changer for your defense at number 8.
Just to piggyback off of what you just said about Dave Canales, and I thought this was interesting because as we're recording this, of course, the NFL Players Association poll grades kind of came out. Yeah. And we know we pretty much expected where David Tepper ended up being. You're one better than Woody Johnson. Congratulations to you. But David Tepper, as a first-year head coach, ranked 17th and got an A- grade already. And to me, that spoke volumes because, like, even though like you're technically in the back half of the league in that, still he's close enough to the middle as a first-year head coach, which still lets me know that his name has great cachet around the league when it comes down to the players. Players are talking, they're hearing great things, or players who have already played for him love the idea of playing for him or with him. And so that's one of those things where when it comes down to what the Carolina Panthers can do in free agency, maybe getting a guy to, take a hometown discount, maybe getting a guy to come over to the Carolina Panthers when they had a sexier team or something with better facilities, that could also sign him just because of what they've heard of Dave Canales. So that's going to be interesting. But to get back to what you just ended with, you're going to have to draft a game changer at 8. And honestly, here's what I say. First 2 days, first round, second round, third round, do not draft a guy that you just see potential in. Don't look at projects in the first 2 days. These are guys that you have to draft that possibly can start for you this year. Actually, your number 8 pick in first round, that person has to be a starter.
Better be.
Barring injury. Day 1, game 1, he better be a starter. The other 2 better be at least pushing for starting roles, no matter what positions they are. If you happen to like a great left tackle, he's got to push Icky, to where you have a tough. Now, I think that's a bad use of your assets. Sure. But if you just have to do it because you just want to draft on best player available, but I think those guys have to be starters or at least pushing for starter roles in the first 2 days. Your last 6 picks on day 3, excuse me. I was thinking round 4 on day 3. Those guys, I think all need to be able to make the roster. Maybe at least 5 of the 6 should make the roster. Yeah. And that will tell me how successful this draft is for the immediate look at it, right? Like, we'll really see how successful it is in 4 years. But, the immediate look at it, if your first 2 day guys are starters and 5 of the last 6 end up making the roster, Dan Morgan, you did a great job with that. And that's what I think you need. You don't need any more DJ Johnsons.
No, you
Even
don't.
though you're supposed to draft and develop, like you can't have a project, you know?
No, you can't just
have a project.
You can't have just project guys. Because yes, I understand that Dave Canales comes from that mindset.
The concert was lit. The concert was lit when they did it.
I'm sure it was. But I know Dave Canales is very much development focused. And that's totally okay. You can still draft a player that can start for you instantly and still develop them to be a Pro Bowl player. You can still develop even high-end talent can still be developed. You might get, again, like a 5th round pick might be a project of like a tight end. You have 2 4th and 3 5th round picks. You know what this draft is loaded with? Defensive linemen, including interior and edge.
Yeah.
Running backs, tight ends. What are a couple positions that you mentioned, Chris, that still need to be filled on offense?
Yeah.
Still need another running back that complements Chuba Hubbard in some way, shape, or form. You still need at least one more tight end.
Yeah.
At least one more. You should be able to find that in rounds 4 and 5 easily. Guys that can help contribute to your team right away. I don't know if you've listened to the show, but Todd McShay, who formerly of ESPN, now with part of the Ringer, has this show, the McShay Show. So he does his whole NFL draft prep and gives grades and all that. He actually said on his podcast, on his show, that he has 30 guys, defensive linemen, whether interior or edge, that he has grades for the first 3 rounds of the draft. 30. What does this team desperately need?
It's like,
yes, that's not like you need a ton of defensive linemen. Yes, you got Derrick Brown coming back, but okay, Ashawn Robinson, pretty good. You still need another guy that goes with him at least, and then maybe another depth piece. You need edge people other than DJ Wanham. Like you need a couple of those guys. Go find those. And yes, this draft is loaded with depth with running back and tight end. All those things that you need. Like those are like this draft is loaded with it. Strike while the iron's hot. Take advantage of the opportunity while you have it.
100% with you.
Crush this draft.
100% with you. And I think when it comes down to tight ends, man, like you just need that guy with the tight end name. Maybe like, you know, a white dude with long blonde hair that comes out of the back of his
looks like
helmet.
A pro wrestler.
You know what I'm saying? Like his name was Brock or Ethan or something like that. He just has like a good tight end name. You know what I'm saying? Like go out and get a guy like that. And, you know, because like those are the guys that stick around and those are the guys that you're going to get some mileage after. You know what I'm saying? Like you already got Jadeveon. You can have, you know, chocolate and vanilla right there, like doing their thing together for the tight end group. And you've brought up this guy on a couple of occasions. What's my man's name from SMU, the running back?
Oh, Brashard Smith.
And he's what, like projected as a 3rd or 4th round guy or something like that?
Yeah, somewhere around that.
And you know, that could be a good 1-2 punch with Chuba as you're waiting on Jonathan Brooks to get healthy, which I do not expect him at all for 2025. So like there's a lot of sneaky good pieces, and that's why I say that like even if you bring them in from the 4th round through the 7th round, I need at least 5 of those 6 guys to make that roster and also to have some sort of impact. They need to play.
Tight end Mitchell Evans, Notre Dame. Mitchell Evans, perfect tight end name.
That's a good tight end name.
That's a good tight end name.
Does he have blonde hair that flows outside of his?
Not long flowing hair, but like a light brown, dark blonde, like however you want to describe it, dirty blonde. Okay. So again, not the long flowing locks, but we can make it happen.
Okay.
We can make it happen. But this draft class, coupled with obviously the free agent moves that they made this year, the draft that they had last year, and the free agent moves and the signings that they have, how long is it realistic expectation for this team to actually be considered a true contender? Not just a team that might make the playoffs, whether it's like, hey, we can win the NFC South at 9-8 and edge our way into the playoffs. Now, or maybe 10-7. I'm talking when you look at this team going in, there's, you know, you're at week 12 and you're like, that team, watch out for them. Like at what year should we expect that for this franchise? So I think some people are thinking maybe this year they can push for a playoff spot and push like at least be 500 and push for a playoff spot, depending on how the NFC South breaks, might even push for the NFC South title. But I'm talking real legit contenders. I think it's going to take a few years to really get there.
You know how like sometimes you have that team where they're probably not going to make the playoffs unless some fluke happens, but that's not a team that you want to play. I kind of want the Carolina Panthers to be that this year, right? And, of course, you can't look at the way that they performed against the two teams that played in the Super Bowl and just say that, hey, they've arrived, right? But they played the two teams that played in the Super Bowl very close and had a real chance to beat both of them. So when you look at that, I want them this year to, if you're going to get blown out, only get blown out twice, right?
Yeah.
I'll give you two. Everything else has to be close. Be that team like Denver, like the Denver Broncos were last year, not in 2024, 2023 when Sean Payton first got there, where they're probably not going to make the playoffs, but boy, you really don't want to play them because they've got some solid players there. And once they figure it out, they're going to be there. They're a piece or two away, right? I want them to be that. But to legitimately like contend for a playoff spot, I think it's not unrealistic to expect 2026 or 2027.
Okay.
You're talking about 2026, year 4 of Bryce Young. And if you still have most of this offensive line intact, Jonathon Brooks hopefully maybe coming back. Maybe they drafted so well with that tight end and that running back that they're part of that offense. And then you have a lot of the same pieces back, hopefully. And, maybe by that, then you have your number one receiver. Adam Thielen maybe is not there, but Jalen Coker and Xavier Legette are, really good and starting to really come along in year 3. And we're just talking about offense at that point because we don't know exactly what they're going to do on the defensive side of the ball to make it better this offseason yet. But I think it's a realistic shot by 2026 to say they should be scaring everyone else in the NFC South and possibly pushing to win that thing.
I think in 2026, in terms of actually like winning the division and pushing for it, I think that's a realistic expectation. I think that's realistic. Now, if they do it this coming year in 2025, great, awesome. I ain't gonna complain about it.
I'll take it.
But I'm talking like a realistic expectation because I think a lot of people will look at what Washington did overnight and say, well, they went from a second overall pick to playing in the NFC Championship game. Now they also, Washington struck gold with Jaden Daniels and also had the most salary cap space going into last offseason. So they were able to do a lot with their roster, new coach, everything. They were able to revamp their roster just like that. And they also kind of played maybe a little bit above their level. And Jaden Daniels also had the best rookie year we've ever seen from a quarterback.
You know what? I think we have to talk about when it comes down to the Washington Commanders. One of the things that I think I keep wanting to call him Quinn Snyder, Dan Quinn.
Dan Quinn. Quinn Snyder.
Think of basketball.
Future tight end.
Yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
A white tight end with Quinn. I think what's so underrated about a Ron Rivera team is he will get you a lot of pieces. And I think Ron Rivera knows how to spot talent and has a good eye for talent and working with his whoever, his GM is to get some of the right guys in the room. Matt Rule messed it up.
Yeah, he did.
Dan Quinn and the new front office essentially was able to say, you know what, we have a good base. Let's build upon it. Because, you had decent pieces that were already there. And then you have two guys from the Carolina Panthers that one, they didn't use right, other that they just didn't have the room to sign. And he didn't want to come back anyway, which I don't blame him. And then you just go out there and get your quarterback, and all of a sudden, voila, here you go, NFC Championship game, right?
Yeah.
In another, universe, maybe that could have been the Carolina Panthers in 2020 with a better coach and some better drafting. It could have been, but I think that's a huge part of it. The Carolina Panthers essentially had to start from scratch last offseason. And, we talked about this before. There's so many holes right now. Depending on what they do to fill out these holes, they have a lot of spots to fill in this offseason. And if they do it, it helps out with our talk of 2026. But if they really don't do it, then we're almost back to square one next year at this time. And so then it pushes that further back. But I don't know if you can fully be compared to the Washington Commanders, because I just feel like they had more pieces. Who I think we really should be compared to right now is what Detroit did.
Yeah. Detroit didn't make the playoffs until the third year of Dan Campbell.
So
did not make the playoffs until the third year of Dan Campbell.
So and that would be 2026. So it's I think that is probably the trajectory right there.
I agree with you. And I think also as well is that, again, Washington had a ton of cap space, whereas Carolina doesn't. Carolina's still paying for the sins of bad drafts from previous regimes, bad free agent signings from previous regimes. Like, they're still paying for those sins. I mean, look at last year. You had $44 million of dead cap tied up with Von Bell, Hayden Hurst, Dante Jackson, even DJ Chark, Justin Houston, all counted towards your salary cap. Bradley Bozeman, you had $44 million in dead cap for guys who weren't even there. Like, so again, they weren't able to make a lot of big time, or not. Again, I know they signed Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis, but outside of that, they weren't able to do a ton in free agency. Yeah. Their salary cap this coming offseason is kind of similar. You also you got to re-sign J.C. Horn to a contract extension. You also got to think that maybe after this season, you have a contract extension for Bryce Young coming up as well. So again, they can sign some guys, but they're not going to be able just to go spend like crazy and get all this top end free agent talent that some people are expecting to happen. I'm like, I don't see it happening.
Yeah. Like, I think, a T Higgins or, somebody like that, a Deebo Samuel, those guys are just not in the cards. I don't think.
No, I don't think so.
But Dan Morgan did say that he doesn't feel like he doesn't feel like they'll have to restructure Taylor Moton's deal, that he feels like they can make it work. Plus, and of course, the cap is going up just a little bit. And based off of what they've already, the moves that they're planning to make, moves that they've already made, and whatever, he feels like he can make it work. That's one of the things he said at the combine. So they don't feel like they're in a bad cap position, even though, you've got some bad contracts. You've got some things that you could probably try to work around. As of right now, they don't feel like they're in a position where they have to do that to get what they want. And that's a good thing. And that lets me know they have a plan. If he's already saying that, if he already knows that, hey, we'll be fine, that lets me know they've already done their budgeting. What you were talking about earlier, they've got that plan. They've gone in. They have their budgeting for whatever is out there, and they'll be ready for whatever comes their way this offseason.
And that's the reason why they brought in Brant Tillis. Simple as that.
Yes.
That's the reason why that man was hired away from the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yes.
Leave your thoughts in the comment section about the draft, but also, again, what's a realistic expectation for this team in terms of making the playoffs, being a true contender? True contender, Chris.
Quick, I want to ask your opinion on them letting Trimble, Eddie Pinheiro, and somebody else, our punter.
Johnny Hekker,
Johnny Hekker, test the market to potentially see what's out there and then possibly sign back.
I'm okay with all of them. I really am okay with all of them. If there's one I would like to bring back, I would probably say Tremble, because I never feel like we got to see him and Jadeveon Sanders together, because Tremble was battling injuries in the early part of the year. When he finally came back, then Sanders had the neck injury, and it's just both guys were just kind of in and out of the lineup. We never actually got to see them those two work together in two tight end sets. We never really got to see that. So I would like to see Tremble come back, but if he leaves, okay.
I'm the same way.
I'm not going to cry over it.
Same way. Those.
And I like Tommy too. I really do.
I really like Tommy. I would love to have him back, but again, if he's going to cost too much, all right, you can go. I like Johnny Hekker. I think he's good for the locker room, good morale, and all that good type of stuff. He can't be one of the highest paid punters anymore. No. That's fine. And so if you have to go, you have to go. And then Eddie Pinheiro, I know he was looking for a lot of money. If you're coming back on a decent deal that's team friendly, okay, I'll take you back, because you're okay as a kicker, and I trust you for the most part. Within 40 yards, I trust you. After 40 yards, I don't really trust you.
Yeah.
Kind of a problem. It's kind of a problem. But all this talk about you being the most accurate, which that didn't end up happening down the stretch, and wanting to get paid a lot more, no, not at the expense of getting a number one wide receiver. No.
Nope.
No. Bye, Felicia.
We'll see you guys next week.